Well, it's definitely going to be a very... Okay, now you can hear me. We're monitoring tweets here, and it's been said that the Clinton camp has been quiet for some hours now, I think over 4 hours. But only recently, we just heard from the chairman of the Clinton campaign organization, Ajjan, who's asking supporters to still be upbeat. He says she's not done yet, but they should go home and get some sleep. Do you think that's just putting up a brave face?
Of course it is. What can he do? He can't acknowledge defeat. They're all biting their necks. It doesn't look good for them, but he has to give some sign of hope, but not in a way that will be ridiculed. So you know, what more could you say in his position? And I think it's quite expected.
Because looking at how close it is, he says that right now every vote counts. I mean, we're looking at margins of 0 point percentages. That's what we're looking at. And it looks like it's really, really, really close in many states, even especially in the swing states. How do you think it will eventually play out at the end of the day?
Well, again, let's look at the two key states right now that everyone needs to be looking at. For sure, the Clinton campaign is looking at. You got Michigan and you've got Pennsylvania. I'm looking right now at Pennsylvania. She's down by about 76,000 votes, okay, with 97% of precincts reported. So again, the question is that 3% that's left over, where are those precincts? Are those precincts in urban areas that tend to vote Democrat? In that case, she's got hope alive. If those precincts are scattered around, then she's doomed. Because if Trump wins Pennsylvania, over, it's lights out for Hillary. It will be the president-elect. Likewise, we go to Michigan. She is down by 70,000 plus. Again, with well, Michigan, there's only 88% of precincts reported, so there's still much more to go there. So you know, those are the two states that everyone needs to be looking at right now, at a minimum, because if she doesn't win both of those, then it's over for her.
I'm just wondering, you know, what those speeches will look like tonight. You know, usually it's quite easy for the winner to give an acceptance speech. But then looking at either party, how easy, I mean, looking at how the campaigns have run, how easy do you think it's going to be for either of them to be able to give a speech that concedes defeat to the other candidate?
Well, very difficult because, again, you know, normally even if the elections are bitterly fought, there's still some kind of, you know, agreement and respect for the process. In this case, you have Trump who basically threatened to jail her and said, you know, we'll see if I'm going to accept the result of the election depending on who wins. So this is, you know, we're really in uncharted territory here. It's you know, you would expect her to be magnanimous if she loses, but then again, you know, if it comes to be very, very close in Pennsylvania or Michigan, and it looks like either of those two states could tip the balance, then we may end up in a situation like we had 16 years ago in Florida, where we end up with months of nail biting and recounting.
You know, if you look at what is happening here now, one key thing is if should he emerge the president, it's the effect this would have on world politics. A case in point here is Russia. How do you think this would go down well with Americans who have always thought quite differently from what Mr. Trump had said during his campaign?
Again, we have to wait for the signals of how a president-elect Trump will behave versus a candidate Trump. You know, already during the campaign, from the primary to the general election, we saw a change. You know, during the primary, he said he wanted to ban all Muslims from entering the United States. Then in the campaign, he said that has morphed into an extreme vetting. You know, what he will ultimately say when he's elected president, you know, remains to be seen. You know, while he's saying all that, he would use examples extolling, you know, Dubai and Qatar as, you know, examples of, you know, great infrastructure that he used during the debates. So again, this is an individual who has investments all over the world. He has investments in Muslim countries. He has investments, you know, on all continents. And he's not someone who has a company that's only run by, you know, white Americans. He's got people of all shades and colors and genders and sexual orientations working for him. So the idea that he's some kind of a redneck that's you know, that's bigoted to the core, even if that has been portrayed during his campaign, I expect that not to be the image that he projects when he's president-elect. I certainly hope it's not, because that would be quite disastrous.
I think it's amazing that this is happening, or rather this is going this way. And if you look at it critically, people are wondering if this is what the average American wants. Perhaps they look at it that they have been hypocritical all the way, loving Trump all the way, liking his statements, his comments, and his policies, and they decided to silently and, of course, secretly go out there and cast a ballot for him.
Well, as we discussed yesterday, it is a lightning rod for frustration and anger on the part of voters all around the country, particularly in those states, what we call the Rust Belt. Those states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Ohio, which he won also. Frustration over the fact that jobs have gone, and people have gotten promises about jobs coming back, and they've gotten some government programs to try to bring jobs back, and they hear about green energy as if it's some magical solution to the audio industry or other traditional industries, and it's just not the case. And he has channeled that. He has talked about NAFTA, which nobody has talked about for a very long time, and he has blasted that. I mean, his final campaign push was all about, I'm going to undo these terrible trade deals that have undone the manufacturing sector across the United States. No one would have picked that up in Poland, because again, people who care about those things are not necessarily the people who are responding to pollsters or represented in the polls. And he was able to see that and diagnose that, and he ran his campaign on that.
For Nigerians, they're trying to pick just one word which was dominant in 2015 elections here, and it is change. Do you think Americans are also seeking change, just as Nigerians?
Well, of course they were. After a two-term president, there's always an issue on the agenda. And the trick for Clinton, and she managed to thread the needle masterfully up until the end, was that she, as the inheritor of the mantle of Obama, managed to portray herself as a change candidate, which seemed kind of odd to me. How can you portray yourself as change when you were part of his administration and you're from the same party? So that was always tricky for her. Now, she managed to skate on that because his campaign was quite unfocused. But in the end, he managed to turn out people who were just super frustrated. And it looks like they came out to vote in larger than expected numbers, but perhaps larger than they ever had before. Perhaps people who have never voted before. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that people who have never voted before came out and voted. That was the key to his success. He bet the farm on that, and the odds look quite good at the moment that he placed the winning bets.
So is it safe to say this is a vote against Barack Obama?
It's a vote. Well, look, when we go through this afterwards and we look at exit polls in more detail, we'll be able to see how much of this was frustration with Obama and how much of this was just frustration. They talked about, drain the swamp, he was saying, and the fact that people feel that, America is not getting better. And this is, his slogan goes straight to that, make America great again. People remember the 1980s when manufacturing, and then, the globalization came in, and circumstances have changed, and those are not coming back, and people are frustrated about that. And so he gives them hope to say, I'm going to undo these trade deals so that we can bring those jobs back. No other candidate has been willing to say that. They've come up with sort of half measures and made promises. Even the Republican candidates, it just hasn't worked. I was chatting with my parents this morning, and the notes they're sending me is, and Obama, and they're still angry with Obama, and that which puzzles me. I say, but he's the old news. Why still talk about Obama? But evidently, there's still frustration with Obama's presidency.
Well, two things that you've said now. One is about the role of change, in this elections, and also the role of posters. You would have to ask, first of all, do you think that there is some resentment against what some people perceive to be the establishment?
Of course there is. This is a big part of Trump's success, whether he ends up winning or not. I mean, he has defied all expectations in the results that he's generated thus far. Even if he comes just short, this is, a step change in terms of presidential elections. We haven't seen anything like this in a very, very, very long time. And so, yes, there is frustration with the establishment. That's been a key part of his campaign.
How do you think that? Do you think the establishment should be looking to reform itself, or be more appealing, or be more sensitive to the American people, beg your pardon, as a result of these elections?
Well, look, the frustration with the establishment did not start with Trump. Remember, since 2010, we had this thing called the Tea Party, which was a sort of a pre-Trump, faction within the Republicans, and so there were very bitter primaries. And of course, in America, we have two parties, so we have primaries. Similar to in Nigeria, when the APC had a primary that ended up selecting Buhari as the president, and there are delegates who are party members who choose the candidates. That's true in all 50 states for senators and members of Congress. And when I ran for Congress 12 years ago, there was talk about having a competitive primary, and I would have had to defeat a candidate to get the nomination of the Republicans before going facing the Democrat. And so this has been playing out for years in America, in particular over the past 6 years with what we call the Tea Party, which was a very anti-establishment force. And the same thing on the Democrat side. The whole phenomenon of Bernie Sanders was a frustration with the establishment. And, your previous guest hit the nail right on the head, saying that, that dogged her all the way up until the convention. There is a large sense of frustration with establishment politics, both on the right side of the aisle and on the left side of the aisle. And people are looking for an outlet for that. So people who voted for Obama are, some of them are now voting for Trump, which seems, sort of paradoxical or hypocritical, as Suleiman said. But, this is the reality. People are frustrated, and they are looking for an outlet for their frustration, and they're looking for something that might make it better.
All right, Judge, it's nice speaking with you again this morning. We hope we'll get back to you again as soon as someone is announced winner. We've been speaking with George Ajjan. He is international political consultant and campaign strategist.